So have you ever wondered how someone like Stanley Tucci can eat pasta and go out to restaurants all the time and still be, pretty fit looking? Well, after reading his latest book, What I Ate in 1 Year, I've discovered his secret. So listen on to discover how Stanley Tucci does the seemingly impossible of being completely food obsessed like me and looking great in his clothes in his 60s. So welcome to Joyful Eating, episode number 216. So today we're talking about my Stanley Tucci obsession and how Stanley Tucci is actually naturally healthy and how you can be too. So the best bite I had before we get into the episode had recently was on the weekend we roasted a chicken from Brad, my farmer that comes to the farmer's market. He grows amazing chickens. And so my Irishman roasted the chicken and then I made a guacamole, and my Irishman's got some gut issues going on at the moment. So it's like the simplest guac ever. So it's just avocado, lime juice, and coriander or cilantro. And what I did differently this time was I mashed up the avocado, like some of it, but one of them I left I used 3 avocados. 2 I mashed up really finely, and then the other one I diced. So it had that interesting texture as well. And then I served it with some macadamias instead to give it that crunch as well. And it was that with the chicken. And then my Irishman's not eating chili at the moment. So I had mine with pickled jalapenos from the garden. And we just had like an iceberg lettuce I just chopped up into wedges, and the crunchy lettuce with the beautiful succulent roast chicken and the guac. Like, it was such a good combo. So in this episode, plan for today is first I'm going to share the story behind my Stanley Tucci obsession and how I know that Stanley Tucci actually is a naturally healthy person, and how you can use this idea and do what Stanley does, and how you can be naturally healthy too without a heap of pain and suffering and actually enjoy life. Okay, so the story behind this is I actually haven't seen any of Stanley Tucci's movies that I can think of, because these days my cinema going tends to be things like Paddington Goes to Peru. But I did read his first book, and I've just recently, I'm still in the process of reading his current book, like What I Ate in 1 Year. And I really I love the format. So each day he's doing an entry of what he ate. So he's just sharing with you his life and what he's eating and how food fits into his life and his food philosophy and what he's cooking. And it's such a great, if you love food like I do, such a great read. Just the way you get a real sense of who he is as a person. Anyways, the more I listen to him, I'm listening to the audiobook, the more I listen to him talk about food and cooking, and it just brings so much joy to my heart. I'm just like, Stanley Tucci, you're the man. I love listening to him. I love his opinions, and just hearing that he's so authentic to himself as a food lover. Like, he just doesn't take any bullshit, and how he loves, it's just so pure, his love for food. And so that's got me obsessed with Stanley Tucci. Anyway, and one thing I was thinking, as I'm reading this, of course, I'm listening to it as a food lover, but I'm also listening to it as a health coach. And as I'm thinking, as he's telling stories about how he eats and what he eats and how full he feels and whether he's skipping stuff, I'm just like, oh, Stanley, you've got this nailed. You're definitely a naturally healthy person. And of course, that's why he looks so great in his 60s. And so that was one of the reasons why I wanted to do this episode. And then also that happened, I get that a lot. And it happened to me recently, a teacher said, oh, Jules, it was a bit inappropriate, but they were like, oh, Jules, I did, they just found out that I had I'd work in food and that I teach people how to cook. He's like, and this guy was like, you don't look like you're someone who works in food, eating. And he was like, you're not overweight. And I was like, yeah, well, you don't have to be overweight to work in food. But anyway, yeah, they just got, I get that a bit. And so there's this thing that if you love food, that the weight is naturally follows. And the cool thing is that it's separate. You can actually be a true food lover like Stanley Tucci and like me, and enjoy all the food that you love and have a beautiful relationship with food where it brings you so much joy, and also still feel good in your body and look great in your clothes. And so that's why I wanted to record this episode. So how do I know that Stanley Tucci is naturally healthy? So first criteria of being a naturally healthy person is that you have to be a food lover. So he clearly loves food. And when Stanley Tucci is eating, he also doesn't eat with distractions. He hasn't ever mentioned I'm reading the newspaper or scrolling on Instagram while I'm eating. And most of the time when he's eating, he's it sounds like he's either at a restaurant or he's at home, but he's sitting down to eat and his attention is on the food. So he doesn't eat with distractions. He really allows himself to eat and he prioritizes his time. So he gives himself time to eat as well. So there was one day he was talking about, he was out at meetings or something, and then he was on his way home and he was planning to work on his book in the afternoon. And he's like, oh, I could just grab a sandwich. But he was like, no, I want to feel good for my afternoon. I want to have fuel myself in a way so I'm ready for my writing. I don't want to have a subpar sandwich. Like he wasn't. And so he went to a favorite restaurant and had a quick meal there, but he gave himself that gift of an hour of having a proper meal and then, going home and writing. So he allows time to eat. He eats proper meals. He doesn't talk about snacking here and grabbing nuts there. He's telling you about the meals that he's eating. And so he's eating, when he is eating, he's eating, but in between meal times, he's not just, existing on random snacks. He's also happy to wait until he can get a proper meal. So if something happens, he's talking about his kids, he's got small kids and how they'll feed them, get them into bed, and then cook something. He and his wife will cook something, and then they'll be having their dinner late. And he would rather, he said, it's not ideal. However, at this time of life, he would rather have a proper meal late and have that experience of cooking and eating with his wife than to eat something subpar earlier on. So he's happy to wait and delay until he is able to enjoy his food. So he's not just stuffing things in because it's mealtime. Another thing that I noticed is that he mentions a few times of not going without food if the quality isn't good. So if he's been somewhere, restaurant, often when he's talking about traveling, food on the plane, if the food's not great, he'll just skip it and he might try a few bites and then he'll wait until he is somewhere, until he gets home or until he gets to his destination and have something good then. So I love that he's not afraid of being hungry and going without food. And rather than being afraid of hunger and thinking, oh, I'm on this plane, so I have to eat whatever they've put in front of me. No, he's making choices so that he's getting the best quality. And also he's not a slave to his hunger. It sounds like he's happy to be hungry because he knows, like I do, that when you're hungry and then you eat a meal, it's such a good feeling and that your senses are really heightened and you enjoy it so much more. Another thing that I really noticed with this is he talked about a few meals when he was in Italy filming and going to restaurants and then overindulging and having too much, and then often having espresso and going for a walk afterwards, to help move it, and then also having less food at the next eating occasion. So he wasn't like, oh, I've just completely overeaten, so I'm just going to go to my next meal and completely overeat again. He would give himself space in between. So when he does overindulge, and I guess that's another thing that makes him naturally healthy, is that he's not always eating perfectly the right amount of food. Sometimes when it is really good, he's letting himself get that really full feeling, which I like to do occasionally. And it feels, of course you get a bellyache afterwards and there's a bit of regret, but it's also you have that freedom to do that sometimes. But of course, you're not doing that every meal. The other thing that I know means that Stanley Tucci is naturally healthy is that he doesn't restrict or deny himself. So he's eating pasta all the time. He's anything that he loves, he includes in his life. And he's trusting his own wisdom on what feels good to him and what tastes good to him. And also, he's got a condition. He had esophageal cancer, I think. Anyway, one of the cancers in the mouth, and that means his saliva, since that treatment, his saliva production isn't as abundant as it was before the treatment. So that means it's harder for him to chew certain foods. So he makes choices based on what feels good to him and what he knows he can have. And he's not following some latest keto craze or whatever fad diet is happening at the moment. He's just trusting it. So, and because he's not denying himself, then he's not experiencing psychological hunger, which is what happens with so many of us when we go, oh, I can't have sugar. And then all of a sudden sugar's in front of us. So we're eating it like a crazy person. He's not doing that. He's letting himself have sugar. He's letting himself have pasta pretty much every day. It's great, but he's also, I think, he's mindful around his quantity. So he's not overeating pasta every day. He's eating the right amount for his body. I also love that he doesn't moralize food. He's not seeing food as good and bad and talking about things being too rich or fattening. He loves food and he sees all the value in food. And I guess the other thing that it's coming through is that he listens to his body, and as I've mentioned before. And of course, and there are times where he doesn't, but that's all in balance. So we know so much evidence that Stanley Tucci is naturally healthy, right? And then, so how can you apply this? How can you be naturally healthy too? Well, really the first step is to just decide that you want to change, and that you are going to approach food differently, that you're going to leave that diet mentality behind, and you're going to stop looking outside for the answer, and you're going to start trusting yourself. And also that you're going to decide to give yourself permission to enjoy the food you love, and actually see being a food lover as a strength rather than it being this thing that's like causing problems for you. And then my fun thing that I thought would be fun to play experiment with this week is, just before you're interacting with food anyway, ask yourself, like, what would Stanley Tucci do here? Like, you're in a situation, like maybe you are on a plane somewhere and the food is terrible. Like, what would Stanley Tucci do? And then maybe just try it and see how it goes for you. And if you want some help on this journey to becoming a naturally healthy person like Stanley Tucci, then definitely check out my new free on-demand training. So it's called How to Change Your Relationship with Food with Ease and Joy, so you feel that peace around food and weight, and your clothes fit again for the long term, even if you're in middle age like Stanley Tucci. So in this fun 30-minute workshop, you're going to discover the only 3 essential skills to be that naturally healthy, to have a naturally healthy relationship with food, so you can reach and stay at your natural weight with ease while enjoying all the food that you love. I'm also going to share with you the 3 phases of healthy eating, and so you know exactly where you are now and how you can get to where you want to go. I'll also share my counterintuitive, simple approach to nutrition to cut through all the conflicting messages and information to help you feel empowered and in control like Stanley Tucci does around food. And I'm going to share with you the easiest way to take your first baby step to changing your relationship with food, so you actually get more enjoyment from eating and never feel like you're missing out. So to get instant access to the workshop, just click the link in the show notes, or if you Google Stone Soup, one word, and go to the Work With Me page and click on the Naturally Healthy section, then that's going to send you to the sign up page for the workshop. Okay, have a beautiful week. Just asking yourself, what would Stanley Tucci do here? And I'm going to have fun playing around with that. And I'll catch you next week.